Writing music to portray a mood can be tricky. So if I were to ask you to write music to portray a dream, could you do it? Well, Young Composers recently sponsored a competition, and we put 21 contestants to the challenge of writing music to a dream. So while we can only have 3 winners, I'm going to discuss some notable submissions and the characteristics of the composition that made it sound like a dream. Of course, if applicable. But writing music to create a mood is a great way to practice your skills. Because if you can evoke the proper emotion with your audience, you will have basically won them over. So while the top 3 winners showed us exactly how to write music to portray a dream, there were just so many good submissions. So I'm going to announce the winners at the end of this video because I want to focus on the notable moments of the rest of the submissions in order to discuss their merits. I feel that this is going to help people learn what to look for when composing for a specific theme. But before I get to the rest of this video, if you want Young Composers to continue sponsoring competitions, don't forget to like this video and to subscribe, because a lot of work goes into organizing these events, and you may only see me as the host, but we have other people helping me run these competitions behind the scenes. In fact, don't forget to thank the judges in the chat. So after this video posts, the complete results to this competition will be linked in the description below, so don't forget to check that out. So the first submission is called A Sonata for a Dream by Samuel. This 3-movement sonata was actually pretty interesting because each movement represented a stage in sleep. And I personally found it quite clever that the music represented confusion and then clarity towards the end of this piece. But Samuel was also able to convey these moods through the use of dissonance and tonal harmonies. And this is exactly why harmony is so important in music, because you can use harmonies to create these moods effectively. But I feel like the intro is what stood out the most for me, as you just get that feeling that you're in a state of confusion right from the start. So the next submission is called A Knee in the Grass Through My Eyelashes. So the next submission is called A Knee in the Grass Through My Eyelashes. And I just want to point out that this was the only song in the competition. So in case you're not sure, a song is a piece of music that has words that's meant to be sung. And it's different from a piece, which is an instrumental piece of music that's portrayed just by instruments. But I feel like that this is a fairly creative song that's freestyle, and it came with a range of mixed emotions, in my opinion. The most prominent emotion here would be agitation. As the song goes on, you'll hear the agitation. And that's convincing enough for me because sometimes I do have dreams that are just agitating. But what stood out the most for me in this song was the intro. If you listen carefully here, you're introduced with an intro. Then the singer addresses the audience with her normal voice.
Listen to us. This is very important. When you know the answer to its question.
But then she sings the next verse musically, which is then a different key.
When you know me, know me, know me, know me.
And this technique captures the listener's attention, in my opinion. I know it definitely caught mine. But I'm curious, what does the chat think about this intro? Because I thought it was pretty clever.
Listen to us. This is very important. When you know the answer to its question, when you know me, know me, know me, know me, know me. They know me. Why didn't you tell me?
This next piece written here by Michaelis was a performance, and As a result, we get to hear all of the nuances of a performance. So that's the advantage of having a performance versus a MIDI. But I'm actually going to play the full piece here because, first of all, it's not that long, but the entire piece is well done. So I just feel like it did an excellent job in capturing an emotion. And this emotion would be, well, actually, let me go to the chat and see what you guys think while we listen to this piece. This next piece on the list is called Argonauta, written by Jordan, and it was another piece that was performed. And I really love the instrumentation here because I feel like the double bass doesn't get represented enough in musical repertoire. So the fact that it made its debut in this piece and as a lead voice, I find that pretty cool. The strengths of this piece are apparent in the entire duration of the work, as we have a very focused melody, and this melody is shared between the piano and the double bass. And the mood of this piece presents a suspenseful battle, in my opinion. I guess we should maybe listen to the entire recording play. It's not that long again, and we'll discuss like what kind of moods we're hearing in this piece. The Escapist by Sam is the next work that we're going to listen to, and I actually find that this is one of the most ambient pieces in this competition. The piece is fairly dynamic, and it just makes a good usage of harmony in order to portray a dream-like mood. But the cool thing here is that Sam also implemented a melody, so this piece is actually both ambient and melodic. And I feel like it does show emotion. I'm wondering if the chat would agree with this. So next we have Reverie Sentimental, which was written by Expert21. This is the only piece in this competition that reminded me of a lullaby. It's an incredibly melodic piece, and if you watch my other challenge video, which was called something like What Makes a Melody, Expert21 was also featured in that video too, so lucky him. But let's focus on the guitar in this piece. The rhythm in the guitar is a great move by the composer, in my opinion, because the constant motion can actually lull someone to sleep. This next composition, which was written by Angel City Outlaw, is the only one in this group that made use of a synthesizer. And this basically sounds like strings layered over a piano. But I feel that this is interesting instrumentation because it contributes to emulate that dreamy effect. And that's well within the rules of this competition. So keep in mind that if you want your music to create a specific type of mood, don't ignore your instrumentation. And this piece demonstrates how important that is. But aside from the instrumentation, I think the strongest part of this composition is the intro, because we're introduced into a dream-like sequence before we're introduced into the main melody. And this gives the listener a great deal of anticipation before this melody starts. This next work, composed by composer from Europe, that's his handle. It's another 3-movement piece that was performed, and I just want to point out a couple of things here. First, let's look at the intro. We get a sort of calmness before we get into a much more intense mood, and I feel like intros are a great way to build anticipation for a listener, and it's a good way to hook them in. But something else to point out in this movement would be the excellent rhythms that we have right here. And I feel like interesting rhythms like this can be a great way to help increase engagement. notable section that I'd like to point out is in movement 2, because it starts out with a pretty distinguished melody. But then later on in this piece, we're going to hear a variation of this melody again right about here. Pretty good, right? The fact that this is so subtle makes it fun to pick out. And now I'm going to ask the chat, do you feel that the mood fits the challenge? Do we think of dreams? A Strange World by Spike. So this piece actually is a strong piece, in my opinion, because it's driven by melody. And the way that Spike was able to hook a listener in is clearly through the usage of these enchanting instruments, which would be the oboe and the harp. So if you want to learn a thing or two about remaining focused on a composition, this specific composition will show you how it's done. The next composition is called Cathedrale Electronique by Powell. But before I talk about the music here, let's just take a look at this score. Powell wins points for creativity here because this score is insane. And this composition is actually very bold because there's no melodic component here. And melody was a metric that we used to score these pieces for this competition. So instead of just looking at melody, we have to go beyond and we have to listen to the entire piece as a whole. So let's check out the atmosphere. I want to point out that this piece was, in my opinion, the most ambient out of all the other submissions. And it's based on, I would say, articulations. And we do have some elements of randomness, but they're ordered randomness. True randomness would just sound like noise. And this is not that type of composition. But coming from the composer himself, he said that this composition was based on algorithmic transformations. The piece is a study of a slow, lulling, and dangerously beautiful immersion in the sound world without breaths. But this piece can easily represent a state of unease, and in my opinion, it's the ending of this piece that stood out the most for me. Because around this section here, is where the piano starts to become quite interesting and also very unsettling. So now we're going to take a look at Relentless Terror by Alexi. First, I want to just point out something on the score. If we take a look at these time signatures, they are pretty interesting. I would say that when you're scoring a composition, though, in my opinion, of course, it's best to try to keep things as simple as you can and only use adventurous time signatures if the rhythm calls for it. This way, the performers will have an easier time reading and understanding a score. But if anyone has seen my last video, we know of at least one other composer who has weird time signatures. Remember that? But as far as the content of this piece, I will say that it is quite haunting, and the strongest part of this composition would be the intro, where we're introduced to a soprano and a tremolo, which was played by a cello. And this sets our mood of the piece right away. Oh, and actually, this part here, I want to point this out because this section here very tactfully evokes a sad, somber, solemn type of emotion. And some other notable things that I'd like to mention about this piece is the usage of pauses or rests in order to accentuate the message here. Rests are incredibly important in music, and this composition, despite its tricky time signatures, makes excellent usage of pauses for emphasis. So the next piece on this list would be Dreamscape for alto, flute, and piano. So the recording is actually going to be just piano. So imagine a flute in the upper registers. I'm going to say that this piece displays some terrifying moments, and the part that I'd like to point out would be these sections here. These notes are actually all semitone clusters, so when we play music this way, we get this highly dissonant, high tension effect. So if anyone has a piano or a keyboard at home, just press all the keys at once and see what will happen. This effect does have its merit in certain situations. Wind's Lament by Veeps. So this is actually a personal favorite of mine because of the nature of the music. So for example, I have a calm temperament and this music reflects my personality. It's also clear that the instrumentation choices and usage of dynamics, rests, and articulations really help to enhance the mood. The music is peaceful and it just makes you want to relax. But at this part here, you're going to see what I mean about the usage of dynamics to create a specific mood. This ending is great because you have the saxophone doing some type of fluttering while the vibraphone handles the melody portion. And I think it's a great way to conclude a piece like this. Who else in this chat has a calm temperament? Moving on to Profane Scenes of Prophetic Dreams by Popson. So this next piece by Popson is, in my opinion, the most chilling piece in this group. The most notable section in this piece is when we have, let's say, block chords making these chilling sounds right here. Chat, are you as freaked out as me? Now this is exactly the mood that you need if you want to create a nightmare. So very well done. Moving on to Deaf Pillows by Irene. So I'm going to say that performances always have a certain charm to them. And what makes this piece by Irene unique is that her intro is quite dissonant, but yet is beautiful. So Irene was cleverly able to integrate dissonance into peace and sadness, and this technique, in my opinion, helps make the tonal sections of this piece really shine. Wouldn't you think so? Moving on to Dreamscape for Cello and Piano by MTK. So this is a 2-movement piece where the first movement has more of a fantasy-like vibe going on here, while the second movement brings out clarity. And the cello is always a nice choice when we're going for a deep mellow tone. But a notable section of the first movement is right around here, where the cello makes this sort of repetitious sound before concluding the piece in a completely unresolved state. Sometimes we get disturbed from our dreams abruptly, and this section represents that. This next piece is called Alessandro's Dream by Composer Boy. And the intro of this piece is what stands out because of the tremolos of the piano and the pizzicato of the violin. So the pizzicato is giving us a foreshadow of the main melody. And there's also some notable dynamics emphasizing the mood before we are introduced to these block chords in the main melody. But this composition, coming from the composer, was based on a murder from 1902. And that would explain why our mood is uneasy. Once again, I want to point out though that harmony plays a big role in creating mood, which is what this piece is aiming for. But melody plays a role in creating a story, which this piece also has melody as well. And finally, we have Liminal Dream by Ian. And this composition reminds me of a dreamy sitcom. And the fact that I felt like I was sitting in a sitcom goes to show you that creating the correct mood with your music is an incredibly effective tactic to create an immersive experience for the listener. There's a fun and playful part around here, which is a great way to break up rhythm. And this part right around here is something that I want to point out, but I unfortunately don't have the notation to show you. However, this cadenza-like part was quite unexpected, and it actually made it stand out from the rest of the piece. So it's really important to have moments like this in your music in order to make it memorable. And Ian has done this very effectively with his composition. And now the moment that we've all been waiting for. Who are the winners of this competition? Let's find out. Third place goes to A Strange World by Spike. We know by now that instrumentation can play a big role in mood. And this piece is actually driven by two very magical instruments. We have the oboe and we have the harp. So the things that make this piece really stand out is how focused it remains. Being focused on a theme is incredibly important when we're writing for a specific mood. And another thing that helps this piece stand out is its beautiful melody. It's an incredibly beautiful and focused melody, and the composer was able to change things up by presenting variations around this melody. So when you're creating variations around an already beautiful and catchy melody, it helps keep the listener's attention. Second place goes to Deaf Pillows by Irene. So this composition was clearly performed, and like I said before, real performances do have a big advantage. And for this reason, they prove how incredibly important dynamics in music are. Because computerized music tends to suffer from a lack of dynamics, which unfortunately leads to a lack of expression and dull recordings. And oddly enough, many composers tend to ignore the quality of their recording output for whatever reason. However, this piece not only has excellent dynamics, but the very first 2 minutes of this piece are incredibly strong, right along with the ending. But the intro is where Irene introduces her motifs, and there's just an overall excellent balance of melody, rhythm, and harmony. The second half definitely gets much more chaotic and darker, which accurately represents the storyline here. And first place goes to The Escapist, composed by Sam. This piece is actually very ambient, and this is a good example of where melody isn't always king. Because in this case, the overall composition and its ability to produce an atmosphere is what makes this piece stand out. Also, good harmony doesn't always mean who can create the most bizarre harmonies in a composition. Sometimes it depends on how well the harmony is used to create a specific type of emotion. Let's take a look at some examples though. For example, right about here, the piano voice is used to create some pretty nice effects without any use of melody, but then the piano chimes in to assist with the melody. So when a voice is shared between two different instruments like this, it helps to create some pretty unique textures. So here's another example where the piano comes in to support the melody. Then we change up the rhythm and tempo at around this part here. And the piano is used to create some beautiful harmonies in conjunction with the melody, which is played by the cello. It's just a beautiful combination of romantic and dreamy. And the ending is perfection, because the piece ultimately ends with a beautiful diminished harmony, which leads us into a state of permanent tension. And it's just a powerful statement to make at the end of a piece. So there you have it. 21 composers competed in this challenge on how to write music to a mood, more specifically dreams. And I presented real-world demonstrations to you. While some compositions didn't quite hit the moods that we were looking for, all of these compositions had their merits. In fact, I want the more advanced and professional composers to have an open mind here, because each one of these submissions could be used as teaching points, even for you. You can learn from beginners, because beginners aren't bound by rules or ideals yet. And as a result, they can offer insights to you that you may have missed. Professionals could sometimes be blinded by the rules of music theory. But on the other hand, I want all of the beginners who watch this video to have open minds as well. If you do have this open mind, you will absolutely learn from the more advanced composers. And the reason for this is because there's just much more to writing music than learning the technicalities of music, as this competition clearly demonstrates. The bigger picture of music composition is this: being organized with your writing is critical, and remaining focused on your theme helps keep a listener hooked. But composing for the correct topic is also critical. Writing music to create a specific mood isn't easy, but remaining focused and on topic is what will help you stand out and become a better composer. So if you like these challenges, then don't forget to check out my previous challenge where I challenged 5 composers to demonstrate to us what makes a good melody. I'll post that video right about here. And I just want to thank everyone for your participation in this challenge. See you next time.